Well, Brian, here we are. We just wrapped up the Grinch series. That was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun.
I was still waiting for you to come out in a green costume. But
Sure.
Oh, well.
Yeah, well.
So this week,
maybe on Halloween next year.
maybe you can be the Grinch.
I can be the Grinch.
This week we looked at developing a peaceful heart, and I thought that was particularly helpful given the year that we've had with 2020, and
It's been a year.
it's not
Or
been the
two.
most peaceful year, but just having that reminder. So I thought what we could do is, you talked about God's plan for a peaceful heart. You gave some really good steps. In fact, you were very, as you mentioned, very Baptist-y by spelling out the word peace for us.
It makes it sticky in the mind.
It does. So God's plan for a peaceful heart. P, prioritize your life. E, exchange your problems for God's peace. A, accept your limitation. C, confess your sins daily. And E, enjoy God's eternal peace. Which one of those is most fun or interesting for Brian Cropp?
I mean, the confessing of the sin is neither fun nor exciting for me, though I probably need it more than I recognize. Just because I try to get by in life by myself. Like one of the faulty thoughts that I have from time to time is like, well, God's got an entire universe to manage. I should be able to take on my own stuff and move along. And yeah, okay, that one wasn't quite wrong, but I'll just blow past it. So confession, the Holy Spirit is very faithful of reminding me that I need to confess. And it really is true that if I would just give up and confess, that peace comes. But I think the thing that this sort of a tandem battle over the course of 2020 for me has been the prioritization step, as well as the accepting my limitations. So sort of in that same vein of I don't want to bother God with things, then I'm just going to try to come in and I'm going to muscle through. And I can't, God's the only person who can will anything into existence. I can want things all day, but I can't make them happen.
Right.
So I think I've just slammed up against over and over and over again that I can't do the things that I think I should be doing, and that I haven't always put God in the top priority. I've either put the completion of the project as the top priority or my agenda in the top priority, and God has also been faithful to say, no. I'm top priority, and the fact that you're stressed out or depressed or whatever the issues are is because you've taken control again. Things are out of alignment. You're stressed out because you're outside of your stewardship, and I need to come back in. And if you'll do that, if you'll trust me that I know what I'm doing, you'll actually have peace. That has sort of been a roller coaster of all of COVID, but yeah. Yeah.
I think the accept your limitations is an interesting one. I want to just talk about for a minute, because I think we often look at limitations that we have and we think, well, I can't be involved because of this or because of that. But, I firmly believe that God equips those that he calls. And what we see as a limitation may actually be either an opportunity or the doorway to actually getting to do some ministry that we couldn't do otherwise if we didn't have that. So say a little bit more about kind of why you included that one and kind of what all you were thinking about the need to accept our limitations as part of finding peace.
I think there's a certain podcaster that likes to say when it comes to limits that a good question to ask about your limits is, what does this make possible? We would see it as, well, this is a roadblock between me and my goals, but it's possible that that very limitation is going to provide the opportunities for other things to happen. So like there was the story I mentioned in the sermon about the judge in the book of Judges who, because he was left-handed, nobody suspected that he was carrying a sword on his other leg. They didn't pat him down or whatever the issue was. And he was able to deliver the people because he was left-handed. Provided a new opportunity for him. So I think that is possibly the most inspiring part of that. I don't always fall back on what does this make possible. I'm usually having a pity party for a little bit first, but God provides those limitations so that our trust in Him can grow. There's the other limitation story that I like is the feeding of the 5,000. So Jesus has this huge crowd of people, and it's far away from a Denny's. What are we going to do? And this guy says, well, we got 5 loaves and 2 fish. Like, that's not enough to feed one person, let alone everybody. And somehow, with that limitation given over to God, He's able to feed all the people and have leftovers. So,
you know what I love about that, though, depending on which one of the stories you're reading with the feeding, there's the leftovers, and there are 12 baskets of leftovers. How many disciples who didn't think it was possible, who were so worried about how we're going to make this happen, they each got to have their very own goodie bag to take home.
That's true.
As a reminder of what Jesus can do.
Yeah. So, we're constantly, our limitations are constantly in our face. And I think, that trust in God's limitlessness. Now, it's still true that we may not get everything we want, but if we put our reliance on God's limitlessness and put Him as the top priority and all of those other 5 things, then, my life isn't making sense according to my prescription of how I thought my life would go, but it's going in a different and better direction. I've mentioned this in the past, and that is that my wife Glenda is not my first wife. That I had been married previously. That relationship did not obviously go well. That ended up in divorce. And there have been times when being in ministry that I think, I can't tell people about that. That's no good. They'll think I'm something went wrong in a bad way, and it just doesn't go well. But there have been different circumstances where there has been the opportunity to say, I know where you're coming from because this thing happened in my past. That I'm not coming from a place of judgment. I'm coming from a place of sympathy. And then when this happened to me, these things happen. So in ministry, divorce can be a limitation, and in some cases is a rightful limitation that you would have. But I've seen that God has taken that because of my particular circumstances. He's been able to use that in a positive way and provided other opportunities that I wouldn't have had if that had happened. Now, I wish that it still hadn't happened, that God was happy that relationship dissolved. But still, God was able to take that rotten situation and still work some good out of that and produce some other opportunities that have been beneficial for folks.
And then you're able to help people
Yeah.
based on that experience that you've directly had that you might have thought was a limitation, but it was part of the story that God was weaving together so that Brian Cropp could do what God wants him to do.
Yeah.
So let's get really real here for a minute. We're nearing the end of 2020, the year that we thought we'd never get to the end of, and everyone, I think like the December 31st celebration this year might be epic. It's like this year of 2020 is over. Yeah. But what is a limitation of this year, of this season that we've been walking through, that you've had to accept that you've actually, when you've done that, you've actually gotten peace in it? Anything come to mind?
Oh, my yes. So, and you and I've talked about this before, that things like having online church services or having a more strategic look into our website or social media, that's sort of in my ballpark. I'm like, this is great. That's, like in March and April and May, that's all we had was online. So it provided this potential for, well, let's do all the things, and maybe let's buy some ads online that help get people who are far from God, maybe a landing page or something that would be helpful for them. And write some articles, and we can get some books published, and we can do all kinds of things that we could do. And then just the weight of the week-to-week stuff was so monumental. You could never...
monumental.
I can't remember that meme that you showed us in staff.
Oh yeah, I
anyway.
remember. It was a guy was on one of those clear whiteboards. You know, using a marker. He was doing this complex math problem, like, you know, calculus squared or something. Right. and it said on there, me trying to find out why not meeting for church is like, you know, twice as much work and all of that. It's
it was just,
how is it that much harder when we're doing less but having to rethink everything?
There's nothing on the calendar, but yet my life is busier than it ever has been. And I think just being met with the weekly demands of what online church takes just to do the Sunday part, we could never quite get to this other stuff. And then when we came back in person to the building, now we're really running 2 separate worship services and 2 separate worship church campuses in a sense. And it's like, now we really can't get to all that stuff. So I've had to sort of trust that if those ideas ever happen, that they're in God's hands and He's going to provide the time and the personnel to make that happen. But it's been months of me fighting God on that and just being really upset and frustrated and trying to make a thing happen that He clearly doesn't, at least not at this time. So
that's good. Yeah, I think the one that comes to mind for me is, as you know, I started in this role back in May as
what good timing.
Lead pastor. I had no idea when I said yes in January that COVID was around, but I mean, that doesn't change anything because of how God spoke to me.
Isn't that hilarious? God knew.
He did.
In November, December, when these decisions were being made, that this is coming and that you're the guy.
Yeah,
it's been fun.
But I think one of the limitations I've had to accept too is just the slowing down of things, because as you know, I'm a doer and a planner, and I had a lot of plans for 2020, and I've actually still got some plans for 2021. We're waiting to see what's going to happen, but so we had to slow down. So the limitation was we're not able to do as much. But what I can see and where I really have gained a lot of peace is there has just been so much to pray about, to ask God to show what does He want us to do in the middle of this. And sometimes it's been, don't do anything. Keep waiting, keep praying, you know, do what you're doing, but don't do these new great things that could be really new great things, but now's not the time. So that's been, as I have accepted that limitation that we have just, because of reality, had to do less. That has, I sort of, as I was expressing my frustration to the Lord, that turned into just this really great time of getting to talk with Him and finding out what He wants and slowing down, put all my plans aside and say, God, You are the one in charge of the universe. You knew that this was going to happen at this very time when I had these other great plans. So let's throw those out. And now, what is it that You want to do? So it's, and I really have found a lot of peace in just saying, I don't know what we're going to do next, but God will show us the next step when we need to take it. So,
and I think in the next couple of weeks, I'm planning to sit down with the plan book and have some goals for 2021 as if.
I'm going to sit down with a Post-it note.
But I have been thinking about this, and this is not prophecy, nor do I want this to be depressing, but I have been reminded of, Joseph had his dreams that Pharaoh had. Like, he interprets the dreams of Pharaoh that there were going to be 7 years of abundance and 7 years of drought. I've been looking forward to December 31st for a while, under the hope that, 2020 is over, we can wash our hands of that and just kind of move on. And I don't think God cares much about December 31st or January 1. He's going to do what He's going to do. And so I think some of the prioritizing my life or giving my problems over to God, which is another step, one of the problems might be that I don't have any assurance that my plans are going to work out. Maybe in 2019, I could plan things and all that kind of stuff, but now I don't know. And maybe it's like this for another 6 years, who knows what God has planned, and we still need to walk forward. Even if my assistant Kelsey, I think, had this joke of what happens when the ball
She's
drops.
She's looking terrified off camera now. I was like, what is he gonna say?
What's he gonna say?
What is he gonna say?
The ball drops in Times Square, and instead it gets to 11:59, and then it moves to 11:60. And then 11:61. We're now in December 32nd, or just like the 2020 never ends kind of thing. And there is a reality of we do need to still make plans, but if we give that problem over to God, that maybe 2021 looks the same or worse than 2020, that we can still walk in faith and have peace in the midst of those troubles, because we've put Him in the proper place in our lives.
Yeah. That's right.
I'm now preaching it myself.
Hey, you know what? Somebody, I recently did a message on being grateful in the middle of great disappointment. Had a very kind church member who, stopped by, told me how much they appreciated that reminder, and I told him, I said, well, we have to first preach to ourselves, and I was doing that for myself to remind myself of all of the truth that was there, and I'm glad it was helpful to others. So I understand. Well, 2020 is not quite over yet.
Not quite.
We finished this Grinch series. This coming Sunday that we're going to have in just a few days from now is going to be our family Christmas service. Give us a little preview. What's to come for the family Christmas service?
Well, it's as best as we can, given an online reality and an in-person reality. We still want to meet as a church family and celebrate the good news that Jesus came to earth, that God sent His one and only Son so that we could be reconciled to Him. And so there's going to be some stuff for the kids that I think they're going to enjoy. There's going to be stuff for mom and dad and the adults that I think will be helpful for them in helping shape good perspective on this season, and how we can change our perspective and lift our eyes to what God is doing in the midst of this, and still be happy and still be joyous, even if, like what we've been talking about today, that maybe everything didn't work out the way we wanted to, and that's got our vision in one spot where we really can turn and say, well, no, God's got bigger plans, and we can change our perspective and our vision towards those things. So I think it'll be helpful and fun and all those good things that you'd want out of a good, like the family gathering in the living room to celebrate Christmas.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And then the week after that is the last Sunday of the year. And
we hope
I've been waiting to do this message for a long time, and came up with a really great title. Hindsight is 2020 for the last week of the year. And I'm looking forward to that, though, because a little bit going off of what we talked about around Thanksgiving time, about we can still be grateful during great disappointment. We're going to take a look at this year and just sort of do kind of some evaluation of the year for ourselves. So if you're listening, I want to invite you to join us for the next 2 Sundays and already start thinking about what has this year really been like for you? What have you learned? How have you grown? How have you been stretched? And so I'm looking forward to that, and we're gonna get to hear hopefully some testimonies from some church members who God has taken them through the same 2020 that you and I have been through, but we've all had our own unique experiences.
Tailor-made for them.
Yes, tailor-made, and learn some specific lessons. So and then we start the new year, but let's not get too far ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, because we still don't know what's really going to happen.
That's right. So if you're in the Fort Worth area, we'd love to have you join us live for our family Christmas service at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning.